And the topic today is rewriting her story. So, as a tribe of women, I've invited you here to gather so we can discuss and reflect on this month. In South Africa, it's been Women's Month based on Women's Day, which was on the 9th of August. This is a historically significant day based on the events that happened in 1956, when a group of very brave women took it upon themselves to challenge a system that was now breaking up their families, that was breaking up their men, their children, and limiting their rights to work, to move around, to exist, and just be part of the human race. Risking their jobs, risking their lives, they took the long march. It was actually a long walk to the union buildings. And they didn't know whether they would return. They didn't know whether they would be arrested. They didn't know whether they would be shot at. But they took that challenge. And with some of them with babies on their backs, they took the long walk. It was a group of women of all races, led by some prominent ones that we know, but there were a whole lot more. So to remember those women, and as the day and the month signifies, it's Women's Day, it's because since 1956, there have been some changes in our tribe as women. But I think we all know it's not enough. There are things that we desire to happen that we would love to see more of, which is why we are here. And we're saying, let's rewrite her story. Let's rewrite the story of those younger than us who are still to create their stories, who still are to face a system that challenges them, who are still to walk the journey and still bear their own tribe of girl children. All we are asking for is for an improved life, something better. And as we are here today, I just want us to know that when we set up these platforms, we are not saying that we are necessarily the voice of all women, but we are using these platforms as the faucet, as the channel to encourage dialogue, to actually reflect on our lives and see where can we improve, what can we do better, how do we connect and get together as a tribe and grow that tribe. And growing means empowering each other, helping each other along the way, and lifting each other up in the process. So once again, welcome. I'm so happy that you are here, that you've joined me, and I am looking forward to a fruitful discussion. Just briefly, just to give you a background on what the Girl in the Mirror is about. The Girl in the Mirror is a movement that wants to facilitate the growth of the girl child, the growth of the woman, the matured woman, the growth of the older woman through different platforms, whether it's actually engaging in physical presence and growing the communities where we are, or just taking that one girl by the hand and saying, I can help you along the way. So today it's a privilege to have a variety of women on this platform who can contribute to this discussion. I've got women who come from that, who were born in those years when those brave women marched. I would love to hear their voices, to hear their opinions, to see what they, in their journeys, they've encountered, what they feel they could have done better, and what, in passing down the baton to my generation, which is the next decade, people born in the 60s and in the 70s, what is it that you'd like us to still do while we still have the strength to do it. And here in our midst, we have the next generations, the younger generations, people in their 40s, in their 30s, people in their 20s. I would like to hear your voices. I would like to hear what it is that could change, that could make your life better. And for those who are mothers, who are grandmothers, what is it that you'd like to change for your granddaughter? So that we uphold that lantern that those women who marched to the union buildings held for us. Can we keep it burning? How do we keep it burning? I know that we've got lots of opposing things in our midst that keep us behind, no matter what decade, whatever stage we are at in life. We've got still colonial remnants that still linger and affect our stories. And these colonial remnants have rubbed on to even when the baton changed from colonialism to independent states. That lantern was simply passed on to a system that was already patriarchal. So we have got patriarchal challenges to work with. And I know some women actually do buy into the whole patriarchal system as a system that keeps order, or that keeps us in check. For those who exist or who'd love to exist with that system, maybe they could share with us why it works and how we can work with it together. And some of us who really truly believe that we as a tribe of women, as matriarchs, as feminists, what is it that in what we have gathered and empowered in ourselves, what is it that we can grow and share with the next generation? There are so many topics that we can touch on, but today I want us to be free because we come from different experiences in life. We come from aspects where some of us are yoked, are married. You could be partnered to a man, you could be partnered to a woman, you could be married to yourself. And then there are those who have gone through single motherhood and they've got different experiences to share. And there are those amongst us who are widowed, so who know the experience of being married and they're now widowed. What has that experience been for you as a woman, and what can you share? And regarding those who've been divorced and left with children, what has your experience of raising children on your own or with the support of your tribe been like? What has the financial support been like? What has the school system support been like for you? And what would you like to see change? And those who are coming, the next generation, what is it that you would like from us? What would you like us to rewrite before we reach our sunset years? I really love telling stories. For me, it's an important part of life. And it is an important part of African life. Many African cultures and communities thrive on storytelling. We believe in storytelling because that is when the tribe, men, women, children, and everyone gather around the fireside. And they get to give somebody an opportunity, usually an elder, to relate a story. It can be a mythological story but it's got a lesson. So, in sharing our lived experiences, we actually give somebody an opportunity to learn something. Your story might seem insignificant and irrelevant when you think of sharing with somebody, like what relevance is it of them? But you don't know the journey that they're walking. So, to those who are here listening in, somebody might benefit from you sharing. So, with this, I would like, when I give an example and I call upon you and you are so inclined to share, please feel free to share, because it's through these platforms, it's through these channels that we can help to continue the battle and pass it on, the baton of the women who walked that long journey in 1956. And with that, I would like us to take a moment to remember them, to salute them, because they opened the way for us. Now is the time. Whatever wrongs that we see in our political settings, in our religious settings, in our family settings, in the systems that let us down, how do we rewrite their story? How do we make them proud wherever they are in the spirit world? So I hope you are looking forward to a lovely discussion. At the moment, I don't have view of who is there, but having laid that down, I would just like to structure this in a way that we go back to that time in the 50s, in the 60s, when not many countries in Africa were actually free, which meant that we as Black women did not even know what freedom was. We were mostly dictated to by the system that existed. For most of Africa, actually all of Africa was under colonization, I think, except one country. And because our menfolk were also suffering under the yoke of being colonized, or being told what to do, what to say, how to behave by a system that they had no say over, they took down that oppression, that hardship on our grandmothers and our mothers. Therefore, I would like to say, let's interrogate, let's go back and just reflect on the bravery of those women when they stood up and they said, we are not going to be carrying passes. We also have a right to exist and be free. What does that mean? And I would like to bring in here someone who's older than me, someone whom I've looked up to. Actually, the two older people who are here, I've looked up to for a large part of my life. So I would like to start with Sis Sheila, Mrs. Msimanga. If you're already on the platform, I would like you to just talk about what freedom and transitioning into freedom over the years has been like for you. Because you were born in an era of limited freedoms. What does having freedom at this point in life mean for you? What has transitioned, what has changed from the 50s to where you are at now? Sheila Msimanga, if you are able to come on, I would love to hear from you. Unmute. You're muted. You now know which
Hello.
we belong to when we still have to be told to mute and unmute. I do the same.
Well, I'm Sheila Msimanga. I'm married. I have 3 children, 4 grandchildren. I'm retired. Freedom. Growing up, I always thought we had freedom because we just didn't understand the system then because I grew up in Bulawayo. But as I became a teenager, that's when we realized we didn't have so much freedom as in political freedom. But I must say, freedom within the family was there. We enjoyed ourselves, we laughed, we went out playing, and we listened stories. But yes, when you look at it again, you might find that the girl child did more than the boy child. I still want to think that. And you couldn't go out until a certain time. You have to be back. You're supposed to be back at home at 5. Your brothers can come back home at 7. And when you look at it now, you think, that was a bit of oppression. But at the time, it didn't feel like it was done with love and protection. Because if you're out in the dark and you're a girl child, you are the one who's mostly likely to be raped. You are, as a girl child, it's unlikely that you rape a boy. So maybe, although you might think you were oppressed, maybe they were protecting you. Because we have to define within a family. I think freedom is different from political, from family, from work, and things like that. There is a, shall I say, a dichotomy, a range of freedom and oppressions within it. For now, I can say in the family, we had our freedom.
Yeah.
We were young, we grew up in the 50s, in the 60s. That's when we grew up. We did play. We didn't think we were oppressed. We were young. We're not politically active. So I'll stop there for that period. Maybe later as we go on, I can come to the other periods as I become more socialized into the civil world.
I must say you've done well. You've really done well. All these platforms. I'm very. I've learned so much in this time of technology. I thought when I was working, I was very au fait with technology, but then now I realize there is more to learn. Today we are on this platform. It's like a studio setting. It's like we are discussing in studio setting, unlike the other platforms that I know.
Yeah.
And so we all learn. And I think this is part of this whole thing about rewriting her story. If we
Mm-hmm.
can have the courage to find the right spaces as tribes, as the female tribe, to
Mm-hmm.
actually feel the confidence to start owning these spaces and building our own likotlas, amadale, those
Mm-hmm.
spaces that men have always held. And then we say, this is our space. I can come as I am
Mm-hmm.
and be at home in this space and voice and tell my story. This is what the girl in the mirror is all about.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually that come here, asixoxeni, let's discuss so that the girl child that you've birthed, the granddaughter that you have, when they come, they know that, oh, our mothers, our grandmothers didn't just sit back because the women in 1956 had already fought a system and won. And then we focused on just what we felt was comfortable. But Namandla, before you go, there are
Mm-hmm.
things that I want you to talk about. You've touched on the issue of we were protected because um, the fear of us being attacked, being raped, and things like that, which is an important aspect of us protecting our girl children, is very important. But there are certain things that I think your generation got that maybe the previous decades, people from previous decade didn't get much of. And this is education.
Yes.
And I would like you, before I bring in Mrs. Dengu, Dorcas Dengu, to come and talk about this aspect, I want you to talk on this. I know you trained as a nurse. Back then, that was a privilege. Can you just talk a bit about that, about education and the importance of education and what it did for you?
Education was very important during our era. But having said that, there were still families that believed that a girl child didn't need to be educated because the girl child was going to get married and off they go, and all the wealth you have put in them is gone. But if you were lucky enough to have a family like mine, where they say education is important because they knew that it was going to quantum you leap into something. You were going to be a teacher, you were going to be a nurse, you were going to be a typist, you're going to be somebody. Because remember, we were moving from just being farmers into economics, that we're now detecting that you need to have money. And to have money, you had to have a job. So we were moving from just being plain farmers, being educated, so that you can earn a living, so that you can up the standard. So education was very important. I was lucky that in the family I grew up in, it did not discriminate boys or girls. We were all given equal setting to go to school. If you knew your stuff, they let you go as far as you can. But having said that, my neighbors, some of the girls didn't go to school because it was deemed it was not necessary. So education was important during my time, is important still now, but it will also, nowadays, it brings us to a point where we say, how do we define education? Which education? The book? Because we found that those people who stop at primary or at secondary still go on to do better than those people who have other degrees. So again, it's another point you can ponder on. I am talking about the education of being in a class and going through a system and getting a job as a nurse, and the family saying, oh yes, well done. Now this is the girl who's going to get us out of poverty.
Interesting. So you mentioned some specific professions that women could enter at the time, because I think at the time professions were limited. And at this point, I would love to bring in Mrs. Dengu Dorcas. I'm hoping she's on here because she's a teacher by training. So I would love to hear her talk more on education, and as an educator, what she has seen over the years, what the transition has been for her.
Hello.
Hello, Mrs. D. How are you?
No, I'm well. I'm very well, thank you.
I would like you to talk on as an educator. And I was talking to Mrs. Msimanga about people born in the 50s who had the privilege of the changing winds, as at the time those women marched to the union buildings in South Africa. But we also had a different setup in Rhodesia, which was probably a decade or so ahead. What does education mean for you? And having been an educator and been in the education system right up to now, when you just retired, what have you seen evolve for the girl child?
When I was in the primary school in the 1960s. There was a bottleneck system of education, which meant that a certain percentage of first African children would go to secondary school, later to college, and a very small percentage, maybe if you started off maybe 100% in the early years of primary school, by the end of primary school, maybe 50% would still be in school, and then maybe by end of secondary school, maybe 25%. Maybe when you go to college, only 1% would go to college, and in that 1%, a small percentage was women or girls. So a lot of the girls would fall by the way from the time they began. So I realized that some of the people that I went to school with from primary school to secondary school, they just didn't make it to the top. So the numbers kept falling from primary up to college. So what determined, the sustenance of those that survived was maybe your home background. Like I grew up in a family where my parents were teachers, so they made sure all the children went to school, whether they were boys or they were girls. And they made sure they went to secondary school and went to college. But for some, they just dropped by the wayside. So there was no deliberate encouragement for women. Like now, there's a deliberate quota system, women in some sectors. But during that time, it was unthought of that, if you're a girl, you should drop it primary school and grade 7 or at high school. So they thought you were quite educated. And when you go to secondary school, they thought you could only be two professions. Either you became a teacher or you became a nurse. And those were the choices. So unlike now, where a lot of women can be engineers, they can be in the sciences, they could be anything that they can think of. But in those days, I think it was quite limited. It was not written down, but it was one of those things that, you just knew if you are a black woman, you either became a teacher if you've made it up to high school, and you became a nurse. So it was unheard of other professions during our time, during the 1970s, the 1960s. So the women were just locked in nursing and teaching.
Interesting. That's very interesting. And it's quite interesting that the two of you here, people who come from that decade, you are in education. Mrs. Msimanga was a nurse. She started in nursing, although she progressed to other things later in life. But it's quite significant because I remember my mother saying there was a time, I think during that time, which would have been 2 decades before yours, when there was a limit. You could only go to JC and you had to stop there. You had to apply, like you go to standard 6, then you had to apply to be allowed to move on to the next thing as a black person. And I'm sure it was even more difficult if you are a black woman, because you'd have the system telling you what to do, and also the patriarchal system on the other side saying you're probably ready for marriage or something like that.
Yeah. Actually, I think I was affected when we got to grade 7, which is the end of the primary school. Yes. There was a bottleneck. Actually, there was a deliberate quota system that a certain number of students would go to Form 1 to secondary school. And I remember you had to pass up to a certain grade, but I had passed maybe equivalent of first grade now. But only a certain number would go to secondary school. So then, there was a cutoff point. Then we couldn't go to secondary school, though we'd applied to some of the top secondary schools. So what happened? You had to repeat the primary school grade so that the following year you could be put in the next. So you'd have to have school managers who would allocate you a school to go to a school. So it was not like automatic that you finish a primary school and go straight to secondary school. There was a quota system. So when I think back, I just wonder, why did I have to repeat? I didn't fail. I passed very well. I was really frustrated that I couldn't go. And yet some of my friends who were children of school managers and so on, they would go to high school because they were children of top people. But those of us, we had to remain and repeat. It was me and my cousin. We were really quite frustrated. So to repeat when we had passed. So the following year we had to apply to some other school where we knew we would go. So I find it was really a strange system that made you suffer.
That's interesting. So having spent these years in the education system, because I know your last posting was in a university setting, and I know for years you've been in that college university setting. What have you seen the benefits, the transitioning for women? What have been the positives for women that we can take from?
In the nationally, there is a deliberate, policy to say women must be promoted. But then, what is policy and what is on practice is different usually. So it depends. If you have a leader who doesn't buy into that promotion of women, they might not promote them. They might promote people who are sweeping and and so the statistics will be great for the women. So, but there are people who are sweeping, who are cleaning. So, and yet at the top management, you don't have those women. And yet they are there, they qualify. So they are not there deliberately because the people that lead have been schooled in that old system where the woman must be in the kitchen and always there. But for us women in our generation, I think very few have made it to the top because you don't choose to go to the top. Sometimes you, like, I worked also in Teachers College for 27 years. And while we were there, I remember one time we went for interviews to be like the principal of the institution. So you go like for 3 years going for interviews and not getting anything, not because you didn't pass, but because you are a woman. And I remember there were three of us who would go many years until we just gave up and just stopped applying. Because it was the men who, even some who are junior to you with less experience, they would get it because they were men. So
Wow.
it's not written, but you just get denied the opportunity. So though that kind of thinking is still there now. But I think the generation of people that are in maybe university now, well, some of them they are pushing their way to get there because now it's a real deliberate ploy to say we want 50%, we want so much percent. So that has to be done. But during our time, the policy will be there, but it will just be sidelined, it will just be ignored. So even if you qualify, you will not be picked. You might attend. I remember I think more than 19 interviews. I remember I talked to the late
Wow.
Professor Makura, who was a vice chancellor, and I said, "But I have applied so many places, and I've gone to interviews." He says, "Oh no, it's the politics. No, you won't get it. It's the politics. Human, not national politics, but individual politics. That they will not promote you because you're a woman." So that was the case with people in my generations, and there are people that have retired that will talk about this, that no, but people qualify, people we have skills, who can training, because like in my case, there's so much training that we've done in leadership in different sectors, but that will not be used in promoting you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I would like at this point to have a different um, thinking from the next generation, from somebody who got educated in Zimbabwe, then worked in South Africa in a different system, moved into an oppressive system and transitioned into independence. So I'd like to bring here Chelsea Moyo and just tell me about your experiences in the corporate world in South Africa and how you've seen it, seeing that you have over the years been part of the system. Hello, Chelsea.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Now that we've listened to the generations before talking about a system where you were educated in, but you were fortunate enough to transition out of and enter a system that was still in oppressive mode, I can say, and trained in that system, grew in that system. You have trained people over the years. Can you just talk about what you've seen as the development of the girl child, of the woman in the corporate setup in South Africa?
Okay, thanks so much, Lillian, for setting this up and also for really providing a platform like this. You spoke earlier about learning. I typed on the chat that I didn't know about this platform. It's so
Yeah.
new for me and it looks all fancy. And really, we learn. I just wanted to reflect on that
Thank
around
you.
learning as a continuous sort of thing. So before I get into my experience in South Africa or Cape Town, I wanted just to reflect a little bit around what the role of women is in society. Just as uh, Mrs. Msimanga and Mrs. Deng were speaking, I was just thinking in my head, like just quickly,
Yes.
like what do I see as the
Yes.
role of women in society?
Yes.
And things that came into my mind quite quickly is that women are central to ensuring stability,
Mhm.
stability in a society. So the word stability came through progress, central in ensuring progress.
Yeah.
And then the third one was like central in ensuring long-term development. So for me, that's how I see women. When I look back
Yeah.
and reflect back in growing up and in times that Usisu, Mrs. Msimanga and Mrs. Dem were talking about,
Yes.
whether women were being pushed into the kitchen by a system or whatever,
Yeah.
their role actually was about stability, development, and progress. It's unfortunate that the system actually did not recognize or did not take advantage of the power that exists within this group of people. So
Wow.
for me, development is everything.
Yeah.
So development and progress is everything.
Yeah.
So what a missed opportunity over these years where
Yes.
we have really, and even now, because we haven't really fully utilized or recognized the potential that women have and really given them their rightful place. So I wanted to just touch on that. And then just talking about my experiences in Cape Town, I think there is a lot to be said about how you grew up, how you were raised, and what you saw happening around you, because that also kind of shapes you and gives you some tools or doesn't give you tools. Because I remember coming to Cape Town, starting a job here in 1992 maybe, can't remember. Yes,
I think it was 92. Yes.
so starting a job at Woolworths as a trainee, and at that time, to be honest, um, very few black people and very few women. Really, the system was the system, and that's what it was. It was really difficult to navigate. First, as a black um, person, you are young, you are black, you are a woman. So that was many barriers that you had to sort of jump over or to cross. And also a system that has been designed, honestly, to put black people out.
Yeah.
So how do you then navigate that system? So it was really difficult. And what happened during that time was that the few people that were there, black people, black women, we quickly congregated, navigated towards each other, and became a support structure for each other. So that to me is something that has really, really sort of been important over the years. And as one progresses and as one grows, you always sort of draw from that support from other women and from other black people. So that to me is something that I want to point out.
Mm.
And then the layers of oppression, if I can put it that way, and
Yeah.
the layers of the different barriers. As I said earlier, you are black, you are a woman, you are in a corporate setting. So you are sitting in a meeting with a group of white males. They are females, they are white, you are black, there might be a black male also there. You really felt that you were literally at the bottom of the barrel. Not at the bottom because you can't do your job, you are you don't have the right qualifications, you don't have the right aptitude. It's because the system and the setup is not, you are not seen.
Yeah.
So the experience for me was that of always gasping, trying to fight, to be seen, to be heard. So that for me always has been a thing that one had to fight. Again, I go back to that point of reflecting on how you were raised, who your role models were, and what gave you confidence and who your support structure was. So if you were raised by a woman like my mother, who you saw in a system, a patriarchal system that she was in as a married woman, umakoti, whatever, da, 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 I saw my mother sort of standing her ground. I always saw her in that setup of being a wife and a woman. And she always sort of spoke her mind. She always told the truth. She was not scared.
Yes.
So that's the thing that I remember. People used to come at home, men, obabomncane, all these kind of people. She would speak her mind. She will lecture them. She will tell them, what she thought about an issue and where she stood. And she always, always did that. So that thing for me helped me. I didn't know that it was going to help me, but it helped me. So
Yeah.
when I got faced with situations, I knew that I needed to speak. As long as I spoke the truth,
Yes.
that's all that mattered. So for me, those things, some people did not make it in the same system that I was in. Not because they were not good at what they did or they were not great product developers or buyers, whatever. It's
Yeah.
because they didn't have the exposure that I had, the tools that I got from my mother. So I'm just pointing out it's certain little building blocks
Yes.
that we had to draw from to survive
Yeah.
a system like that. And then the importance of friends, the importance of community. If you had a community that and friends and people around you that made you feel like you can actually do it, no
Yeah.
matter how difficult it
Yeah.
was like, no, people like Lillian, for example, people like Sharon, people like, I can name a whole lot of women
Yeah.
that I worked with at Woolworths, Black women, that we sat and spoke about our challenges and we drew from each other and we supported from each other and we said, no, man, bahlanya love, just bahlanya, just go, just do this. Those things were critical. So it's support, it's that background and that belief in yourself. So I think for me, as the years go by, you gain the confidence.
Yeah.
It builds as you go through different sort of challenges and you conquer those, you
Yes.
rise, you grow, your confidence grows, and you really become this person that says, no, man, actually, this is, I can do this. This whole thing is a lie. This whole thing does not exist. Actually, it's about me, my capability, what I can do. And then all those things help you also to navigate your position within family. Because remember, guys, all these things that you experience in the corporate world, don't think that they are isolated to the corporate world. It's society at large. It even goes to a family setting.
Yes.
Because in a family setting, you've got girl children, boy children. There are dynamics there. There are dynamics there, but all these experiences give you the courage to navigate. So for now, I will stop there. But for me, I think my key points were how you were raised, what you grew up seeing, which at that point you didn't see. It came
Yeah.
to the support, who you surrounded yourself with helps as well, or helped me at least to navigate the system, to gain the confidence and to believe in myself.
That's so
Excellent.
amazing. Thank you so much, Chelsea. I mean, you touched on so many interesting points, and there I am writing furiously, and I'm agreeing. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. This is exactly what it's all about. And one of the important things, because I'm very privileged to have known you from a young age, one thing that you touched on that is amazing is that foundation, having a mother who, whether she was part of or entrenched in the patriarchy system, knew how to, when to fight the system, when to navigate it for you, when to get you out of it. And I think we had similar things in that when our mothers were correcting or wanting to make sure that our stories are not their stories. One of the things that I know that we share in common is that they made sure we got the education. Just like Mrs. Msimang and Mrs. Doka said, they made sure we got the education. And that whatever education we got, they would do their best with what they had. They made sure that they got us out of the way of patriarchy. We were sent to boarding school where we could focus on our studies, where we were not part of doing the chores, where we were not part of being in the politics of the family. We would just come back to the politics of the family when during our holidays. And even then, you know, depending on the mother that we had, they would actually say, so having a parent who cared or who could or challenge a system was amazing. But most importantly, is the thing of having your friends, your tribe of women to take you through those difficult times, whether it was in corporate or in family. And I must say, I'm very privileged. I said it before. So in my life, I had, from my teenage years, I had Mrs. Dengu as somebody who was there. She was almost like chaperone, mentor, and I always had that to fall back on. And by the time when I went to varsity and no longer had Mrs. Dengu at my exposure all the time, that's where I met Mrs. Msimanga. And she became that bridge between my mother's generation and her generation, who could give me the insights and tone down my, if I can say it, my fighter rhetoric, because I was a fighter, because I knew there is something not right about this system. And on that note, I'd like to bring someone from that same generation, Bonita Pera, because we spent some time together in that time, and she knows some of that fighter rhetoric, what we had to go through. And I would like to speak to Bonnie about this. Is Bonnie still there? I don't know if we're having connection problems with getting Bonnie on. It would have been very great to oh, okay. Unfortunately, Bonnie is not connected. I think she's having connection problems. We'll try back with her. But I've really loved hearing all your ideas, what you have shared, and bringing us back to rewriting her story. And if we look at the different decades of what has been shared by Mrs. Dengu, shared by Sis Sheila, shared by Chelsea, you can see and feel the transition over the decades and how the one generation of women has supported the next to get onto the next rung of the ladder, which is amazing. And it speaks to, at least at that point, we have not dropped the baton for those women who are much on our behalf and demanded rights. I would like to speak to somebody who is in the next generation of women who are now caught in this world where we are now past the stage of like, you must have a profession and this must be your career, this is what you must follow. So I would love to call Ngosi Kona to talk to us about her experiences as somebody who's also straddled both worlds. Hello, Ngosi.
Hi, Sis Lillian, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Welcome. I know you've
Thank
been
you so
listening
much.
in. You've listened in to the elder women. You've listened to Chelsea from my generation as like your sister, and here you are. I know you're a hustler of note. I met you, and I was like, wow, this girl. She is transitioning. Something is happening. For you, how do we continue writing this story of the girl child, of the woman, to be a better story, to be a story that my granddaughter can look back on and say, those women tried their best. This is why I am here, and this is what I can take forward.
Okay, thank you so much for having me, first of all. And it's I'm so amazed at what the other ladies said. You know, when you sit in this generation, and most of the time we focus on the present challenges that we are facing, and we don't reflect on the work that women who came before us actually, um, we don't really reflect on the work that other women have actually done. So I was so fascinated by Omama, you know, what they said and how the system was for them back then. And it really gave me something to ponder upon even after the webinar, because it's something that I never really paid much attention to, you know. So I have always been so focused on what is happening today to us, the younger generation, but really I never knew at a deeper level what, the foundation that has been laid by the other women. So I'm so appreciative of the work that you guys have started,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully we'll be able to raise the bar as well, and continue to empower generation, so that when you look at the next generation, you will be proud of us as well, as much as we are proud of you guys.
Wow.
So I took it the liberty to just jot down a few points when you were asking the question, what would we like to see change in this generation? First of all, is the other ladies have stated that the education system, I've always believed that the education system is flawed. It
Mhm.
doesn't really, as much as it lays the foundation for us to go out in life and live life, but I feel like there's still a lot of work to be done in that regard. And also in terms of personal development, I would really love to see more platforms like the Girl in the Mirror, you know, and other ladies rising, really rising to the occasion and empowering the girl child, and encouraging personal development and growth. Because in order for us to raise women who are able to think independently, we need that education
Yeah.
when it comes to personal growth and development.
Yeah.
And I would really love that's also that comes in terms of society. The education needs to come from society, as well as the religious setup as well.
Mm.
So though, when it comes to those two, because yes, charity begins at home, but what happens when you are outside of the home? So those two places, I feel like there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in terms of encouraging growth and development. And we as women, we need to take our stand in those two setups at home and in the religious setting.
Yes.
So I would also love to, on that regard of personal development, I would love to see us encouraging youngsters nowadays to be able to think independently.
Yeah.
We are a generation that relies solely on the media. Whatever we do is based on the information that we are fed by the media. So now I would like to see change in terms of more platforms coming up, more women creating platforms like this to actually be able to teach young women how to think and not just what to think about. Because there's a difference between how you think and what you think about.
Yeah.
Media nowadays, what it does, it feeds us and it tells us what to think. But we are not taught how to think exactly.
Yeah.
So I would like us to be able to encourage that and be able to teach young women how to think independently. Because what that does is it allows people to actually express themselves, to bring in fresh new ideas, not ideas that they are fed by somebody else.
Yeah.
So that is on that issue of personal development and growth. I would really love to see us encouraging young women to develop skills as well.
Yes.
You spoke about me being a hustler. I'm about the hustle. I always, like, in my family, I always tell them, guys, school is great, go to school, get education, but nothing beats the life lessons that you will learn when you are out there, when you're outside of the school setup. So I want us also to encourage skills, which is something I always say as well, that when I was attending school, I really never had somebody who paid much attention to what I'm good at. So if we can be able to build and actually start programs to encourage youngsters to develop skills, because we need those in this era that we are living in more than anything else. And that includes as well the religious setting that I spoke about. We need more women. Yes, we know what church is about. It's about spirituality. We understand that. But taking into consideration the times that we are living in, we should be able to bring education, like all-round education, in every arena that we find ourselves in,
Yes.
including skill development. I want to encourage women to stand up, even in religious settings, to encourage youngsters to develop their personal skills.
Wow.
Because skills, for me, they are tied to your purpose in life. When God gave you a gift, he actually wanted to use you to make a contribution on this planet, to be his extended hand on this planet. So if we don't encourage personal skills, if we don't encourage people to develop the gifts that God gave to them, then that's the reason why graves are full of talent that was never utilized.
Wow. Thank you, Gosi. We have fast run out of time because these discussions are so heated, they're so exciting. I really love, I saw a comment by Chelsea here that we don't have enough of this intergenerational sharing. And I just want to take this opportunity to say to Mrs. Dengu, to Sis Sheila Msimanga, you have actually started a movement, because I've had the privilege of tapping into your wisdom. And I would really love you for a while to be part of this movement so that we can share these things that some of us have not had the privilege to tap into. There are people who don't know history. You heard Nkosi saying she's totally amazed about what you shared. So this has been really, really beautiful. I've enjoyed this. There's been a request to see if admin can actually allow us to all see each other. I don't know if that's possible, because this was also a new platform for me. So if it's possible, we would love to see each other and wave at each other. I don't know if, okay, it looks like maybe one at a time. I'm not sure. They're probably trying to do that, and we can see who is here. But you ladies have been amazing. It's been fabulous. It's been so great. I've loved this discussion. And for those who are watching on YouTube, thank you very much for the support. And this will be ongoing as we continue the Rewriting Her Story series. This is for us, it's for the future generations, is to honor the women who have done it for us in the past. I'm truly honored for you ladies to be in my life, to be a part of my journey. And as we grow, I thank you. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Lillian. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.